Hello again, Year 13. Okay, so let's look at the next couple of questions just to finish this off. And what we're trying to do here is just model and demonstrate how you can go about thinking through a question. And that focus on AO3, getting your sense of a strong argument, looking at different interpretations. What would the logic of your argument perhaps be? Right, let's think about this one. Gothic literature demonstrates the consequences of disrupting the natural order of things. Consider the text you've read in the light of this comment. Now let's get to the nub of this question. So we're talking about consequences, disruption, and this idea of the natural order of things. Interesting question. Now what I would be tempted to do as an introduction there is to just engage with this idea about what the natural order of things is and just show that you know that that is a construct which shifts through time. There isn't any agreed sense of the natural order of things. And not just through time, it shifts in different cultures, like how things should naturally be. It changes. What they thought was natural in the 16th century, we don't always think is natural now. Okay, and I just show that you know that. Make the point that Gothic writing mirrors this, and the writing tends to carry or to show the interests or the preoccupations of their age. So I would suggest that when you get a question like this, you show that you know that that isn't a fixed thing. It would be the same about something like sin. There's another question about sin, making sure that you understand that the way that's been interpreted and understood has changed through different times. Okay, anyway, let's get on with it. Macbeth, does it show the consequences of disrupting the natural order of things? I'd say, for that question, I'd say probably yes, it does. My argument would be Macbeth does show that because at the time when you had concepts like the divine right of kings, the chain of being, it's very clear that a disruption of that and the consequences of that is what sort of dominates the play. The play does demonstrate what happens about that. The other things you might think about is the witches representing the unnatural and their role in it. You might think about Lady Macbeth and, of course, the gender context there, the gender consequences, or the implications that she disrupts the natural order of things as well by being too powerful, by dominating Macbeth at times, particularly early in the play. Okay, so yes for Macbeth is the logic. Frankenstein, does it dominate? Does it show the consequences of disrupting the natural order? Well, I would say yes, to a large extent it does. The creation of the monster shows or illustrates the kind of romantic beliefs about man's hubris, about man going too far, and about an excess of belief in our capacities and about science. So, and obviously the creation of the monster being, or the creature being unnatural. However, you need something else to say. You can't just. I would advise you not to just keep saying yes, yes, yes all the way through. Try and think a bit more deeply. How could you argue against it? Well, you could argue that, as well as the consequences of disrupting the natural order of things, it also demonstrates more just kind of simple human failings. So, for example, Victor's failure to be responsible, to take accountability and responsibility for what he's done. So it's not just about the consequences of disrupting the natural order. It's also about more human consequences of just getting it wrong, I suppose, or failing in our duty to others. What about the Bloody Chamber? Well, I would say sort of. She does sort of show what happens when the natural order of things, or things that might expect to be the case, are disrupted. So you might look at something like In the Company of Wolves. You might argue that the natural order of things is for the young girl to be kind of ravished by the wolf and dominated by the wolf. But in actual fact, she takes control of that situation at the end and uses her kind of sexuality to achieve her aims there. So what are we saying? We're saying sort of. Carter seems to suggest she does demonstrate the consequences of disrupting these things, but seems to suggest that the natural order of things is deeply repressive, the way things are presented to us, so for example through fairy tales, and therefore she sees it as a good thing that it's disrupted. She's trying to show disruption in a much more positive way than the other text, perhaps. So that's your kind of slightly different spin on the argument. But there you go. We've got yes, yes, pretty much, and sort of for Carter. Okay, and the final question then, whoops, is this. Consider the ways in which Gothic writing could be said to explore the fear of forces beyond human understanding. So what have we got? We've got fear, and we've got the idea of forces, and then we've got beyond human understanding. What would you say? Okay. Well, I would be considering things like, in Gothic, yes, you could argue in your intro, fear provoked by the unknown is common, yeah. Exemplified in these texts by the supernatural in Macbeth and in the Bloody Chamber. And you've got the unknown being, so I'm trying to link unknown with beyond human understanding there. Maybe it needs to be a bit more specific, a bit more precise. There's scientific advancement in Frankenstein. Okay, but what would you say? Does the writing explore the fear of forces beyond human understanding? Now, I'd say yes. In Frankenstein, it really does do that. But to a large extent, it does explore the fear of forces beyond human understanding. You need to think about the context of science and romanticism, and their views about man's hubris in attempting to understand things that it shouldn't try to understand. And it does display the belief that mankind is overstretching. Okay, so yes, it does. I need to use examples, obviously, to back that up and to illustrate that. How about Macbeth? Does Macbeth explore the fear of forces beyond human understanding? Well, it does to an extent, doesn't it? Because there's lots of the supernatural in it. You think about the witches, the opening of the play, the ghosts, all that sort of thing. There is a lot of it. All right. That's my daughter. Just going to see what I'm doing. Speaking into a computer. So, what am I saying? Macbeth, so yes, you'd say yes to some extent. They do explore the fear of force. You may put into a bit of context here about they were times in which ghosts, witchcraft, the supernatural was believed in by large numbers of people, believed to be true. And the play does start with the witches. It has got that fear and that sensation. Remember, it's a play. Remember, it's drama. So it's got that dramatic sense through it. So how could you argue against it? You might then try and argue this point, saying, however, the real fear, the real horror in the play that's explored isn't just some scary witches, it's what happens to Macbeth and what's happened to Macbeth's mind, which we do understand. Macbeth's decline is caused by ambition and greed. He tells us about his state of mind in the soliloquies, and maybe that's the thing that's frightening. Because we could have recognised it. We recognise the potential of good people, people like we'd see ourselves, loyal and that sort of thing, to become bad, to be tempted into darkness. So do you see what I mean? You're saying, well, partly Macbeth explores the fear of the supernatural, so therefore beyond human understanding, but partly explores the fear of being human. It explores the fear of things that we can recognise, so somebody becoming over-ambitious or somebody becoming greedy. So that's different, isn't it? That's within human understanding. You could also, as an alternative, argue that the real horror is about regicide or treachery. You could say it's a political play. If you took this line, you'd be saying it's a psychological play, and it explores, one man's descent into evil, and we get close contact with his mind as he sort of goes through that. Or this would be, it's a political play, so the horror really is about regicide and treachery. Again, obviously politics is within human understanding. You'd maybe bring in the context of James I, the Gunpowder Plot in 1605, the fact that the play references real events that were within human understanding. It's not just a ghost story. See what I mean? Right, the Bloody Chamber, what could you write? I would suggest, does it explore the fear of forces beyond human understanding? Not really. I don't think it really does. You put it into context to a modern audience. People don't believe in ghosts and werewolves and vampires very often anymore. So therefore, it's not exploring the fear of forces beyond human understanding. In actual fact, it's just using the fairy tales to make points about humanity, which are rational, which are within human understanding. So things like about sexuality or about repression, or about patriarchy or domination of women. Um, so yeah, it's making more kind of political points. That's what it's exploring, things which are understood or understandable, um, but it's just using the supernatural sort of ideas as a vehicle to do that in a sort of interesting, effective way. Um, okay, so maybe again you're reaching a conclusion which looks back and says, in the past, when when forces beyond human understanding were more, I don't know how would you say it, more sort of common or more believed in, um, then maybe. But you could argue perhaps that what you've read suggests that more modern Gothic might tend to comment more on sort of real life stuff. See what I mean? So what have we got to wrap it up? We've got consider the ways in which Gothic writing could be said to explore the fears of forces beyond human understanding. Frankenstein, yes, it does do that, which is understandable in its context why it would. Macbeth sort of does, because it's got forces beyond human understanding in it. However, it also explores a lot of human understandable uh, decline or thinking or psychology. And the Bloody Chamber doesn't really explore the fear of forces beyond human understanding. It's about, it tries to expose um, real context in society at the moment, real situations that not in the sense of werewolves, etc. But you see what I mean. So that is that. What you need to do now is just practice doing this yourself and coming up with a line of argument, points for and against, quickly, so you can do it under pressure in the exam. Hope that's helpful. Speak to you about it soon. Bye bye.